Hi, I'm Suzanne Laubscher, and in this presentation I will discuss situational cues. Situational cues are grouped under the immediate environmental factors and form part of the transfer context. In this presentation we will cover what is learning transfer and why is it important, transfer climate and its dimensions, what is situational cues and why does it help, practical examples of situational cues, and then I'll focus on job aids and its benefits and best practices for creating job aids. Bloom et al. Defines transfer along two major dimensions. The first being generalization, which is the extent to which the knowledge and skills acquired in a learning setting are applied to different settings. And secondly, maintenance, which is the extent to which changes that results from a learning experience persist over time. Transfer is affected by context. Elements of the post-training environment can encourage or discourage the application of newly acquired skills and knowledge. Instructional designers need to consider what impact the work environment will have on post-training behavior in order to design interventions to create or direct a positive transfer climate. Roel and Goldstein defines transfer climate as those situations and consequences that either inhibit or facilitate the transfer of what has been learned in training into the job situation. The more positive the training climate, the more likely it is that learning transfer will occur. So how do you create positive transfer climate? The transfer climate consists of two categories, namely situational cues and consequences. Situational cues serve to remind trainees that they should utilize learned skills or cue trainees on how to perform them. The consequences trainees observe after applying learned behavior will further direct the use of what they have learned. The transfer context can further be broken down into 8 dimensions. Under situational cues, you get goal cues, social cues, task cues, and self-control cues. Further, you get consequences like positive feedback, negative feedback, punishment, and no feedback. Let's look at each of them in more detail. Goal cues remind trainees to use their training when they return to their jobs. For example, managers set goals for trainees that encourage them to apply their training in the work environment. These can be done with performance review discussions, for instance. Social cues arise from the behavior of peers or supervisors that influence trainees. Examples include discussions or peer support, but also modeling of desired behavior. Modeling is a very effective way to support trainees in the application of their newly acquired skills and knowledge. Task cues are characteristics of a trainee's job and work environment that prompts or remind him or her to use new skills and behaviors acquired through training. For example, readily available equipment or software, as well as job aids that remind trainees how to perform tasks. Self-control cues include various self-control processes that permits trainees to use what has been learned. Tesma and Ritchie, as well as Tracy et al., do not see self-control cues as part of the transfer climate, since it relates to personal experiences and rather form part of learner factors, and more specifically, transfer coping strategy. Consequences, as conceptualized by Roel and Goldstein, are listed by Tesma and Ritchie under social support, which is another factor of the immediate environment. However, Tesma and Ritchie do mention the use of feedback systems such as performance reviews as a situational cue. How I understand it is that the actual feedback system serves as a situational cue. As instructional designers, we do not often have control or jurisdiction over goal or social cues. The transfer context might not form part of the scope of the project. But during the contextual analysis phase, we need to identify risks in the work environment that might cause a negative transfer climate. These risks, such as a lack of equipment, or dysfunctional management styles, or low opportunity for peer support, should be mentioned in the design deliverable with suggestions on how to address these issues. Very often, these issues can be addressed by additional training, in which case instructional designers can impact the transfer climate. But a very effective way to extend the impact of the training we design into the transfer context is by creating task queues, such as templates, checklists, one-pages, or job aids. I would like to take the remaining time to share benefits and best practices on creating job aids, since this is surely one thing that all of us will develop at some point in our careers. Job aids are simple, clear instructions on how to do something at work. It's a repository of information, processes, or perspectives, and it's external to the individual. It supports work activity. It directs, guides, or enlightens. Job aids are exemplary. The just-in-time availability of job aids, compared to designing and coordinating training programs, result in a quicker and cheaper way to provide on-demand, in-the-moment support resources. Job aids are especially helpful when consequences for error are high, or to help recall steps when rare tasks are performed. Here is an outline of the steps to create a job aid. Firstly, gather information about the task and the audience. Find out what prior knowledge your audience have, for instance, their familiarity with tech terms. Talk to a range of employees who already perform the task, and try to do the task yourself and take note of what information you needed. Decide on medium and format. It needs to be easy to use in the context where it will be used. For instance, does it need to be handheld or will it be on a wall a meter away? And thirdly, make it nice to look at. A visually pleasing job aid will motivate staff to use it more often. Consider basic graphic design principles such as scale, color palette, contrast, fonts, and spacing. Situational cues in the work environment can create a positive transfer climate, which will increase learning transfer. Situational cues should promote generalization and maintenance of learned skills and knowledge. Provide advice on situational cues that fall outside the scope of the intervention. And whenever applicable, include task cues, such as job aids, in your design to promote learning transfer.